What's happening? Can I put this in the center? I figured after that very self-indulgent, technologically astute video, I'd go very analog for my presentation. I've got 3 lovely little children at home, 6-year-old little girl named Sage, a 4-year-old boy named Alex, and my daughter Ella, who's 2. And my 6- and 4-year-old, I always have to do show and tell. So I figured, you know what, I'm gonna do show and tell, and this will keep me on time, and I won't go over. So, you know, for me, there's something very powerful about the idea of objects and narratives and how objects and narratives in life could kind of set you on your way for living out your experience. And you know, a lot of people ask me, and a very common question is, how'd you come up with the rhino? Right? So I figured that would be the core of these next 9 minutes of speaking. How did I come up with the rhinoceros logo? Well, it all started in growing up in Lakewood, New Jersey, in a bi-level, and my parents had a garage, 2-door garage that they converted out of this 1,500 square foot home, and they converted half of it to the blue room. The blue room had a shag blue carpet, a white bar with this mirrored backdrop that had the print of marble on the mirror, and this really big, cushy velvet couch, and like all kind. Oh, I think they might have conceived us in this room. I could never figure out how my dad had a nautical-themed bar. You know, a Jewish guy with a nautical-themed bar. So the other half of the garage was our workshop, which we never really used for very much. My Uncle Carl used to come and do handiwork around the house, and that's where I eventually set up my little airbrush studio. I used to airbrush t-shirts in high school, right? And hand-making t-shirts one at a time. So I started the business, all throughout high school, I'm airbrushing t-shirts and, being very entrepreneurial. I go to college, Rutgers College of Pharmacy. I was a very average pharmacy student. I was very passionate about my art and illustration. I was very into graffiti. I aspired to want to start the business in around 1993. In about 95, a couple years after I started the business, I was in pursuit for a logo. And that's where the pursuit of the rhino started to happen. So there I was down at my parents' house in Lakewood, make my way into the blue room where I was probably conceived, like I said. And there my dad had a collection of these sand driftwood rhinos. It looked a little bit like this. And these things are probably worth a couple dollars or whatever, and he got it at Englishtown auction in New Jersey. And I started having flashbacks of playing with my rhino and my action figures. You see, I had a Han Solo action figure here, and my neighbor Darren Robinson had a Tauntaun. Do you guys know Star Wars? Okay, who knows what a Tauntaun is? Okay, Tauntaun, Empire Strikes Back. Come on, people. What's your problem? Tauntaun, the opening scene on Planet Hoth, that the snow beast comes, right? And Luke's alone on the Tauntaun, and then he gets, and the snow monster, captures Luke, and then Han comes on his Tauntaun. Well, anyways, Darren had the Tauntaun action figure that Christmas. He got it. And I didn't get one that Hanukkah. But I had my rhino. So I would take my rhino, and I would take Han, and I would kick Darren's Tauntaun's ass. So I started reflecting. I'm like, wow, the rhino, what a great animal. What a great, what a great potential logo to pursue. And I started riffing on it and doing a little bit of research on its nature. At that time in business, I was quite desperate. I was about $6 million in debt. And there was something about the idea of the survival nature of a rhinoceros despite being poached. So it became very metaphorical to me. Also, there's a clumsy gracefulness about the rhino. Crunchy on the outside, soft in the middle, kind of like me, and kind of like how we operated the business, a little bit sloppy, but when we would really focus and put our head down and go for it, we would execute. So the rhino became our logo. And it all was tied to this Star Wars, right? So for me, I've always been a passionate consumer of the Star Wars brand. I really attribute a lot of the Star Wars, the narrative of this, the backstory of the Rhino and my Han Solo action figure, to learning a lot about my business through studying the Star Wars brand. So much so that I'm a huge George Lucas nut. So I upgraded on my action figure, and I managed to go from Han to this unauthorized George Lucas action figure. As an adult, I got this after about 10 years in the business. I'm in like Shibuya, Japan, or Osaka, or maybe it was Hong Kong, I can't remember. And there I was, and I see this one-off action figure that they're selling for like $200, the equivalent of about $200 US, and I had to have it. It's a George Lucas action figure. I'm not really into like stalking celebrities, but there's one celebrity that makes me nervous, who I am in awe of. It's George Lucas. So I bought the action figure. Fast forward to, I don't know, about a year later, there is a fundraising dinner in New York to honor George Lucas. I can't go to this dinner. I have to travel in the 11th hour. I bought the table already, so I was going to send the 9 people that were going to go out of the 10, me being the 10th, to still go. And I just asked my good friend Coltrane, I said, Coltrane, in my seat, bring little George. Because I want George to know the importance of Star Wars and the Rhino story and, my brand. And just all I want is a picture of George with little George. So that night, they managed to get the picture of George with little George. And not too shabby, actually, Scorsese was there. So I actually have a picture of little George and Scorsese. So this became like this became a real journey for me. The narrative, I was going the continuity of the narrative and the power of the object of the Rhino, and the Rhino being really a closet tauntaun, and it becoming an answer for a logo for my brand. The fact that George and the Star Wars brand, George Lucas and Star Wars brand, there's so much that I learned from studying that brand, this amazing lifestyle brand that makes you really feel something down deep inside. I frankly learned more from that than, let's say, studying Ralph Lauren or Nike, which would make more sense, right? That's my core business, coming from fashion business. I should be getting more from studying Nike. Not that I haven't learned a lot from studying those guys, but studying the Star Wars brand certainly has led me to learn a tremendous amount about my brand, my business, and licensing and the such. And it kept me going so much so that, there I was, I had this photo, and I cracked in. I'd made an imprint, or at least he'll remember the action figure. So a year later, at another fundraising event, and George Lucas is there, and I'm there. I managed to be there at this one. So I go and introduce myself. I say, hey, do you remember meeting an action figure of yourself? He said, I do. That was really bizarre. I was like, well, that was my action figure. That was my mini George. He's like, I've never seen that before. And so I go on to explain my backstory. And soon thereafter, I'm in the Skywalker Ranch, staying at the Akira Kurosawa suite, having breakfast with George Lucas to sign a licensing agreement to make Star Wars clothing. So here's, if anyone wants to rock this, this is pretty badass, okay? Admit it. All right, so the point in all of this, what the hell is the point? What does that have to do about innovation or collaboration or any of that? Well, for me, there's something very powerful about objects. And there's something very powerful around the learning that comes from objects, demystifying these things, what's in the code, what's under the hood, as an entryway. What you saw in the video, me talking about Sweat Equity Enterprises, which is an education design curriculum program that I run. It's a not-for-profit. I will be leaving later on, earlier today. Unfortunately, I won't be able to stick around and see from these great storytellers, but Mackenzie King, who's the program director of C, who's here in the house. Where is Mackenzie? Mackenzie, where are you? Oh, there you are, Mackenzie. She'll be around. Stand up so that they could see what you look like. Not that they might not all remember, but so there will be a continuity point for me here. But the C program is really something I'm really passionate about, especially when we start to consider the fact that we think, well, the fall of Lehman's was a big deal. We start to take an inventory on our school systems, people. The fact that we're pushing out 1/3 of our kids from American public school system, okay? We're losing 1/3 of them to dropouts, all right? It's 1 every 29 seconds at a cost of $250 billion a year, okay? You could fund the National Institute of Health for 10 years with that, all right? You could endow NASA for a decade, all right? So we have to do something. And what I'm trying to do, what I would try to share with you here is the power of an object that someone would have told me to, hey, put that down. Don't touch that. Focus, right? There's so many objects that we use in our life today, our cell phones, our computers, our digital cameras that don't even really have a place in our school systems, but yet they're critical on our jobs, right? So, for me, what I use sweat equity for, and what C is all about, is about demystifying the consumer products that we build and we built this economy off of, and using that as a gateway. So if it's a sneaker, a watch, a social network, a video game, whatever it is, we've managed to really, as a not-for-profit, bridge the divide between private sector and schools. So anyone that's a private sector person, a captain of industry, you guys are stakeholders in the success of our school system, all right? And it's important that we all engage, and that's what C is about, and it's about really at its core, innovation and collaboration. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. I have a question. How many of you guys have kids? Okay. How many sent your kids to public school? How many to private school? Okay. You know what Warren Buffett says? You want to fix American public schools, you shut down American private schools. Anyways, on that note, that was my story.